but here for the dialogue.
I might have to pop off a bit early, but I will be
We can
present
make
as long as I'm
this,
able.
yeah, we can make this one short and sweet too. Just happy to be remaining consistent and we've got the live stream going. I'm actually in the process right now of upgrading our whole YouTube and putting some more videos live to go along with these live streams. And I just finally figured out how to make Zoom transcriptions. So now we'll have a written summary of what we talk about, like you had suggested,
Yeah,
Elizabeth. Yeah, thank you for
that's
that.
awesome.
Yeah. So here we are. It is Magdalene's feast day today. So just thinking about the spirit of Mary Magdalene at this time and everything that she represents and her lineage and her legacy and the path of the rose. That feels like definitely a potential grounds for our dialogue. I also see Megan shuffling the deck. So I'm curious what will come through there. And also, of course, just what is alive within the circle and any themes or topics that have been present lately. Would love to hear from you. And I always love Elizabeth doing her farm work while we tune into these things. It's happy.
The best. I love it. I am currently sitting at the park that's located like right in front of the headwaters at Mount Shasta. Yeah, this is where we ended up today on our trip because we're in like the middle grounds of we were in one Airbnb that was like a little lower near Castle Crags, and now we'll be at an Airbnb that's like right around this area, but we can't check in before, you have like that weird middle. So we decided to bring our kids here because we love it here. We were like led here in 2020 to go to Mount Shasta through a deck of cards that I had got gifted to me that are all about the Cathars and the Miraphors and the Rose Chalice path, and it's been a wild ride, and I love that today of all days I'm sitting here with my kids exactly where I wanted to be. I remember saying it when we came to these headwaters, like just so cool to have this like just of all days, of all days for this to be where I am, and that I wanted to make sure that I was present for this. So I wanted to make sure I was in a place where I could be, focused and not rushing or running. So it's so cool to be listening to the water and to be praying to the water and to have done our last novena day and just all of it. All of it is so cool. Yeah. So cool. So I'm just grateful. That's what's alive for me right now is that I'm in much gratitude for that life has weaved its way into exactly the things that I said, but in ways that maybe I didn't quite, see or exactly. I also thought it was so cool that today I learned through the novena that 2016 is when they started to actually have a feast day for her and actually see her for who she really is. And that's the year I had my first daughter, and I named her Credence. And I really find that to be like really cool. Like, like where do I get it? No, I don't, but I really love it. I do. So yeah, I'm playing with the cards and I'm going to see what card pops out for today for us just here in this council for what we're standing for and what we're showing up for, because all of us, look, you're working, Elizabeth, you have things going on, I'm in the midst of a vacation or pilgrimage with my kiddos, and you're nursing a back injury, and we're still here, and I'm just like grateful for that, super grateful for that. So I'm excited to see what the cards say. Oh, there they are. So there was two, and I really love this because I feel like they both represent Magdalene so well. So one is literally the Mary Magdalene card that represents her in the deck, and I just feel like that's her showing her presence to us right there. Like, hey, I'm here with you. You are not alone. But the second one is the anointed. I rise with only more soul, and it's carrying like the carafe with the oil. I love that for all that she represents. everything. And having like the beauty of the veil. I really loved that part of the novena in the cave. That was really beautiful. Okay, I want to read them just to see what they say because I think that they'll be helpful. Okay, so I'll read Mary first. So it says, Mary Magdalene, love only ever expands. Peter says to Mary in her gospel, Sister, we know the Savior loved you more than all other women. This passage makes clear that Christ's love for Mary was unique, singular, and so there were teachings that his love for her alone could communicate, teachings that she alone could receive, and that she alone would then share with the rest of the world. Because of this, Peter then asked Mary, Tell us the words of the Savior that you remember, the things which you know that we don't because we haven't heard them. Mary 6:2. The heart of Mary's gospel then follows. She reveals that what has been hidden from us. She teaches us about the vision we are all capable of, how the soul perceives the world with the spiritual eye, or a form of seeing from within this unassuming and humble space of the human heart. Mary's intimate exchange with Christ in her gospel takes place from within her. Christ tells her that she's wonderful for being able to perceive him, and that this capacity to see within the heart, this true vision, is the treasure. This love that sits at the core of who we are is what allows us to become the bridge between worlds. This love that is stronger than death, this love that reminds us when we are bound by a power of the ego that we are also a soul. This love that frees us. When we allow love to overwhelm us, letting it reach where we feel broken, alone, unforgivable, or forgotten, this is the whole point of being here. The point is to let love reach where it has never been before. Christ's love for Mary is the other half of the Christian story. It's the other half of his ministry, and I believe we're ready for it now, which is why her buried gospel, lost to us for almost 2 millennia, has been found. We're ready to put their love story into practice. Their story is a love that has always been meant for us. This love that makes simply being fully human our true purpose. This love that resurrects. This love that brings us back to life again and again. This love that only ever expands. And the question is, where has my love not yet reached? I love that. I acknowledged yesterday that I felt disconnected a little bit, like a little, I don't know, maybe just a little detached or like I don't entropic, the entropy energy, I felt that. And I all day I was like, man, I think I'm in one of those like, get to the next thing, get to the next thing, get to the next thing, and not in the fruit of it, like the meat of it. And it took me all day until the very last moments. And I remember when it all hit me of like, dang, I'm really here and I'm really doing this. And it seems so important and I just was crying and it was just epic and I couldn't, I couldn't stop it. And for me, being a deep feeler, and maybe this is like a thread here, but I used to turn off the feeling sense because in this world, there's oftentimes we're asked for that, the feelings are so big. They look so big. They're very vulnerable, and a lot of people whom I was surrounded by were not interested in the feeling of it. And I learned to turn that off, and I'm very grateful that I'm not in that space anymore and that I can see when it's happening, but that it doesn't have to be that way. I could feel it or we can feel it and it's okay. And it also brings me to my tiniest girl who every single place that we leave, any single thing that we do, she cries tears of that feel every time, and there'll be a human part of me or like an ego part of me that's like, okay, you did your crying, inside, but I'm always reminded, don't do that, let her feel it. She really loved it and she's really going to miss it. And that's beautiful, so that next generation over here really teaching teaching me. So yeah, I've spoken for this part. Maybe I'll read the second card in a minute, but maybe there's something someone else wants to share.
You're muted, love.
Sorry, I was just saying, could you repeat the question about like where?
Yeah. So the question was, where has my love not yet reached?
Hmm. Wow, yeah, I feel like just sitting with that one is so profound. And I feel like this is part of this work with the council. Like I was thinking this morning, I reached out to a woman I found on Instagram to see if she wanted to come on and guest speak because she's super versed in matriarchal studies. Like she's like a huge advocate of matriarchy. But then I kept like, I reached out to her, I sent her a message, maybe she'll come on. But I kept like digging deeper and I found a few videos that were like essentially like man hating, like
Yeah.
her really saying like, here's all these pictures with me and my child, and like there's a reason why men aren't here. And like in the photos. And it was interesting because she touched on this point of that like the matriarchy means that men were not present in the child rearing. She was saying that like no, like the biological father was like out of the house and it was the mom and the aunties that were raising the child. And like it just really struck a chord with me, and of course I'm open for dialogue of like, okay, what have other cultures done? What does history say? But like just on a personal note, like I'm feeling right now like my son is missing so much without having a father present.
Hmm.
And like even this sweet man that I'm in this courtship with right now, like we're in a navigation of understanding like what his role is. And like I'm so grateful that he's inclined to like lean in and be present. And he made a comment the other day where he was just like, yeah, I mean, there's things that Azani like behaviors that he's portraying that if he was mine, that wouldn't fly. And I'm just trying to figure out like where I stand within it all, And I told him, I was like, it doesn't matter. You don't need to be like taking on like a stepfather role or anything like that. Like you can just be a good, solid older man in his life. And it's okay for me to have other people besides his parents disciplining him. And for the most part, give thanks. He's an amazing little boy. But I see where he like kind of runs over me a little bit and like more and more as he's coming up and he doesn't have that male figure in his life. And coming back to your question, I'm noticing where I hold rage against the masculine for like not being present and being absent in really important parts of caring for life. And I want to like Queen's code it, like I want to be able to transmute like the disappointment and resentment and anger towards like, what we've been talking about throughout this whole council of how can I approach it in a loving way that calls them forward.
Yeah.
And just to say, like, I totally don't buy into that piece that like men are not the biological fathers are not meant to be a part of rearing the children. Like I think it's completely the opposite. I feel
Um,
like it's not the nuclear family, it is the whole village, but that the role of the father is so important. Um, and I want to be able to like lovingly invite that forward, whether it's from my own partner or like men in general or whatever it may be. That's like the transmutation I feel like I'm very much in right now of instead of holding this like existential wrath on the masculine for having just kind of blown it for generations, being like, okay, I'm gonna like let my love go into those pockets and call them forward.
Hmm. I really love that. I feel that big time in my own life. And I feel like when I had my first daughter, I didn't have as much support, and it was just really different. But when I think about that time we had the conversation about the brain, I really loved this and I keep bringing it back in my own life about how like the part of your brain turns off, where you can like critically think and you just have the part of your brain looking for safety and love. And when a man is like in a room with a woman having a child, how much that I couldn't even imagine, like, where there's so many questions I have of like, where are you at loving yourself? Where have you been lacking love? Where are you having a hard time, like, looking at yourself, and how much of that you have to go through when you're pregnant with a baby, and then the man doesn't necessarily like physically go through that until the baby's like in front of them, as much as we'd like them to, and maybe some of them do. They choose to like tap into the unseen in those moments, right? Because it's not seen yet. It's what we see is only the growing belly. We don't actually see the baby until the actual baby comes. And I have so much compassion for that. I think it didn't start that way, but it's gotten there. The beginning, it was very like, where are you, and why aren't you more of this? And I didn't even know what I wanted. Like, I couldn't even know what I wanted, but it's like nothing's ever good enough. And but I will say, like, even the person that I'm not necessarily with anymore, that's still the father of my first daughter and who loves her very much his own way, like the way he can love through his lens, right? Through his perspective, through what he's chosen to see within himself. Like, there's been this like this deep pocket for me of he's so important in her development, and he's so important in her life that, like, I have literally decided choices in my life based off of that fact multiple times, of like, okay, but it's extremely important that he's in her life, and it's extremely important that he's in the raising of her, and if he's going to choose to be there, if he wants to be there, then I have to do the work too, and I have to meet him. And then to go to the second part of having my second daughter and being so supported. I mean, my husband was literally in the bathtub with me when I had her. And I am like, I cannot explain the amount of like healing I went through as a woman, as a person, as a girl, as a multidimensional being in this physical body. Like, in that moment, nothing. There's nothing that could have done any of that except for that vibration that way. Like, and yeah, was there midwives there and friends that I felt needed to be the aunties of the bunch? Yes. Was my mother there with my first? Yes. All very important. So for me, yeah, no way. There's so many men in my life that, like, there's so many women in my life that have hurt me so far beyond what I feel like the men card. It's sad to say, but it might be a little expected. It's like weird, but like there's almost this like, okay, you got to learn this one. I'm going to help teach you. But man, and with the women, it's like we're holding each other to this such high standard that sometimes I feel more hurt patriarchally through some of the women that I've been held by, or been even like the beginning of having the baby, there was women that I just did not feel safe being my midwife, or being my, I mean, even this last time when I didn't end up having the baby, but still had gone through a very long time of being pregnant with the baby, almost the whole first trimester. I mean, the whole first trimester up until a couple weeks. And the women that were holding me at that time, I did not feel safe with. And I knew that. I knew that. I knew that they did not feel, it just didn't feel, it's a feeling. It's not something I can quite put into words. So it's interesting you brought that up, because I feel like there's this deep compassion that I have for watching men become fathers, and for what that takes. And that there is a responsibility of us at this time, if we're going to say that we're calling the Magdalene back and calling the Mary back, and owning this, then there is a responsibility as the Mary to, in a loving way, help steward them into their Yeshua, into their Christ energy, into their leadership, And I mean, for me, I'm very blessed. I have watched my husband he meets the standard every time. It's not easy, it's not simple, and he's not perfect, but boy, does he like want to do it, and has the yearning. So it is possible. But yeah, that's just my little mini ramble of what that made me think of, or my own experience with that for sure.
I mean, this is what we're talking about here is that piece around assuming responsibility as women to lovingly train, initiate, guide, lead, ask our men to step into certain roles and certain ways of being that might be quite foreign to them, but that really does serve the unit, the family unit, the community unit. And to of course it can come with a sense of like, I don't want to do this, like you don't deserve it, whatever excuses we can come up with. But it's like at the end of the day, we're doing it for ourselves and also for our children and their children. And we spoke about that in that first council of like, what are we willing to do on behalf of generations to come? And what else are we going to do? Just like ignore them or just like tolerate behavior that isn't serving? Like, I think this is really the only way forward. Mhm. Calling them up lovingly.
Oh, some treats. Okay. Then, um, so related but slightly pivoting to the question we had that kind of came through last week about like what would Mary do? It's like an interesting way to link that, like, because I've, as always, the struggle or the challenge is like remembering it before or in the moment of conflict, in the moment of tension, the moment of triggering, before, well, ideally before, if you like, sometimes it's like if you catch it a little too late, then you have to like do the thing where you're like, okay, in this moment, it might be that I have to be like, I'm sorry, or you have to like kind of backtrack and like not do the thing, which is like a weird desire in some twisted way to like, oh, I have to dig in now because I've like started to have this response. So I have to just like continue it. And so part of it's been like, what would you do? It'd be like, okay, the acknowledgement of like, that's not the mature kind of loving thing to do. So trying to remember that and then trying to just bring that question to mind a bit. What came up for me was, I guess, starting to feel into and distinguish when it is like, what would Mary do? Is it that like, okay, I would not actually be angry about this, it doesn't need to be that way, I know he's whatever, like it's up to me to soften or respond differently. And when is what would Mary do be what we were just talking about like the calling forward or being like being strong about something because I know that like this is something that's an important thing that I need you to acknowledge and like step up into, and that one's still sometimes a little challenging about like knowing knowing when it's like, no, I'm for lack of a better word, because it's not about being right and wrong, right, in relationships necessarily, but when I'm right in the sense of like, no, I do need to be strong about this, or I do need to speak this and be like, no, this is something that I need you to attend to. And when is it I feel that way, but it's really because there's like an unhealed thing or there's something that I need to attend to. And it's sometimes tricky. And I was rereading in this like novena, I've been rereading parts of like the various Mary Magdalene books, and I was rereading her transmission from Sevilla Dragons. And she in the transmission she shares, you're supposed to like read it as first person, you kind of meet these different angels of that she goes through, right? And there's like the angel of love and peace, and it was really interesting reading those and going through them again and being like, okay, there was like the faith there, then there's the trust, and then the third one is clarity. And I come back to clarity again and again, the faith and the trust. I feel more and more anchored into that. obviously you do these little rabbit holes or something happens and you get thrown off. You're like, okay, but the world is scary, or this is going wrong in my life, whatever it is. But generally speaking, I feel much more anchored in like faith and trust and like how things are unfolding amidst all the chaos and horror and all of that. But it's the clarity piece that feels like it's that like lynch point isn't the word I want, but the um almost like if something's blocked, where like if you can have clarity, then the flow happens. Because if you have the faith and the trust, it's like faith, trust, clarity, and then alignment. And that's the piece, right? Because when I feel really clear about things, then I can be in alignment and be strong about it. I remember when we were doing with the Way of the Oracle, and it's deep priestess witchy into it. And my partner is supportive, but he also like he didn't know exactly what we were doing. And there are times, like there's one of these times where he's like, you go and you just like disappear. And he felt really disconnected from me. And it brought up, I think, these fears and these questionings about like, what are you doing? And like, because ritual and magic and all these lineages have been corrupted or used. I mean, words and movements and all that can be used for good or evil, right? And go either way. It's what's there. But that was not something I was like, oh, I should think about this. Maybe this is something that's like, there's a darkness there. I was like, there was such clarity around it that I was able to be really strong about it. And it was a challenging conversation at first, but when I have the clarity and I feel like super rooted in it, it allows me to be in alignment and to like feel like what would Mary do, or like what do I need to call, how do I need to call this person forward, or where do I need to look at things. And it makes it easier when there's a lack of clarity. That's when like my brain is all chaotic and there's a this or this or what or this, and then you're trying to tune into your higher self or whatever it is, but you're like, I'm not even tuning in because there's too much going on that you can't, so I think helping people, or help people being able to get that clarity from themselves too, not from someone else. And obviously, when I have teachers or like beautiful beings like you who I just inherently trust because of, like you said, the way it feels, the energy, what I've learned from you, Roxy, and from Isis, there's a trust and a knowing where it's like, if you or Roxy or you or like Isis share something, yeah, I might explore it and have to feel into it, of course, as we all do. But there's an immediate willingness to be like, wow, if Isis is sharing this is something that she believes, like I'm really going to feel into that and have more of a trust towards it than some random person saying some random belief about whatever, but really the most powerful way to come about that is that gnosis that we've talked about, right? When it comes from you and then gets confirmed from the outside, but how do we get to that space of clarity and gnosis? Like that's such a big piece, and there has to be unlearnings, and even looping it way back to like our huge prayer of like ending war, rape and war, like there's a lack of faith, there's a lack of trust, or there's faith but it's like fake faith, and like being rewarded for all these terrible things. But how do we help people shift so that there's this unlearning and awakening, remembering, but that it's coming from them, because people don't like to listen to other people, it needs to come from within. So how do we create space, environment, content? How do we get to that space where people can come to that gnosis and that clarity, actual clarity? It's, yeah, just a thought, just many thoughts that I just shared.
I mean, the cultivation of gnosis, I feel like this is a huge part of the cultural revival that we're within, is like bringing people home to their own wisdom. And what has really been sparking me lately is to study what our ascended masters would have studied.
Yeah.
You want to connect to Mary, study what Mary studied, like we've been doing, like there's like the actual incarnated being that represents these things. But then it's like, well, what was she eating, living, studying? How was she praying? Who was she being informed by? And then to connect with that. And I feel like that feeds into such gnosis. And I mean, I would go so far as to say that the degradation of our intuition and that seed of inner knowing of gnosis is actually one of the culprits to the rape and war society that we're living in. Which could be an interesting approach, Elizabeth, like as we're building out the books in time to have like the culprits, to somehow
Yeah.
create a map of like, here's the many contributing factors, like the nucleus family, like loss of intuition, like separation of God from people and the religion and priests being put in the middle, like
The 9 to
whatever
5.
degradation of our soil, like the 9 to 5, like there's so many pieces of society, like this is all contributing to this war machine that also manifests through sexual misconduct because people are not in touch with their own divinity.
Yes.
I'm almost seeing like, well, one is almost a mind map kind of thing where you like click on one thing and then it zooms in here and then it keeps going do 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 do. And then there's also I almost see like a the way timelines split where it's like, okay, here we are, and then this point happened, this rupture, whatever it is, and then now we're going here. Maybe like you think about like the church and all the things that are happening there, or like paganism and like the witch wound and like, but even like way back, like how far back do we want to go? Are we going back to like Atlantis and Lemuria and like all the way back? And but you can kind of almost see, I don't know how we would exactly represent this visually in a tangible way necessarily, but you can like visually almost see like, okay, so this is where we were, here we go, this happens, okay, now all of a sudden, instead of continuing on maybe like the beautiful Lemuria pathway, it's like now we're here, okay, so now the timeline's gone there and now we're going this way, and then this happens and you start seeing these like ruptures and various timelines come in. So if that way you can, if you see it going that way, actually maybe it would be like going backwards, like here we are now, and it's like almost going backwards to see all the points coming back to like returning to a a way of living that is more aligned with love, light, and peace, which has been such, those words are now unfortunately have kind of been diluted the way they're thrown around, but really that is what it is: love, light, peace, like harmony. Those are all the things that we want to live in a state of. And I also wonder, that's why I like the phrasing, like the ancient future, right? We also don't want to go completely backwards, like where, I mean, there's obviously within indigenous tribes, they're maintaining this way of living and it's aligned for them. But I don't think we all need to go back to living in that way. So it's not about backtracking completely and going back, but how can we heal or go back or see where we made the errors and then do the like elevated version of it? Like where can technology be really supportive for us in like helping the future? I mean, or even like, I mean, like free energy is a whole nother deep dive that I could go into, which I think is probably tangenting us a little bit away, but just the idea of like free energy would just like change so many things. There's a documentary by Stephen Greer, and the last 15 minutes, the first majority of the documentary is like people being hushed and like it not getting out, but the last 15 minutes is him creating like what would happen if we had just free energy. And it's like the world that would be created, it would end like war and poverty and all these things. So like, and those are that's like, energy is an ancient technology, but the ability to harness it involves technology that is more advanced. So that is that kind of like ancient future coming together. Like what aspects from the past and ancient cultures and indigenous cultures can we learn from and bring forward, and how can we harness these amazing developments and potentially from beings that are more advanced from us and bring that into the present? Like how do we merge those?
Casual afternoon, Wednesday afternoon conversations.
I love it so much.
I love that it's like the word that's been coming up for me lately a lot is intersection, like the intersection
Mhm.
between this and this. And it's cool that like this is a women's council, but it's also kind of bridging into sovereignty
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
how like the sovereignty contributes to having the inner resource, the inner posture to then be an active part of creating a culture that is more loving and considerate and kind.
Absolutely. I had a cool like life lesson of this yesterday. So my daughter had this dream before we left, my tiny one, so the 4-year-old, she had a dream that she was going to meet this cat and this cat was going to guide us somewhere really cool. And that the cat, something about the cat was really like interesting or special, but we would know about this cat, right? So we go to Dunsmuir and we go to this really cool restaurant to have breakfast. And it was interesting because in the restaurant there was like this smell by this window that we were sitting by. I could not get over. My nose is so sensitive, but I could not get over it. And we ended up having to move tables, and it was funny because it was about to get me to like, let's just take our food to go. I can't be in here. And once we moved, it was fine. Like it could have just, who knows what it is? Things get moldy, whatever. And so we eat our food, and I kind of shake off the energy. And I truly think it was actually like energetics that I needed to shake off myself, judgments of just where we were. It's not my norm. It's not what I was used to. Like when you have a little expectation of what your morning's going to look like and it doesn't look that way, it's totally like that. And so we leave the restaurant, and this cat crosses this freaking street and comes right next to my daughter's feet. And the cat does not look well. Like the cat, definitely a little mangy, but sweetest fucking cat. Like the cat is like, you can tell this cat is sweet. And so the cat keeps coming towards her and circling around her, and reasons like, we got to go to this garden. And then I'm like, what garden? And she's like, look. And I look across the street, and sure enough, there's a community garden right across the street that I didn't even notice when we first got there. And so she's like, let's follow the cat. So we're just like laughing because I'm like, this has got to be the cat from her dream. So we go and we follow this freaking cat, and it leads us straight through the gate. And what do you know? The community garden is having their Tuesday where they let kids come in the garden and they're painting and print and they're doing planting, this whole thing. So we go in and we get to paint with feathers, which is like a huge thing for me. There's like a big line there for me, is that we're painting with feathers. And there's elders. So they're telling us about this garden and why they do these things. And the lady said this one thing to me. Her name was Julie, and she had the most magnificent hair I've ever seen. It was all white and so long, and she was wearing this beautiful blue outfit. I will never forget her. Like she is ingrained in my mind forever. But she tells my girls, she says, they think Dunsmuir is a poor community. She's like, but you have to know that, what does it mean to be poor? And so they're kind of talking to her for a minute, and she goes, well, I think that we're a rich community. And I said, I feel that you're a rich community too. I said, why do you say that, Julie? And she says, because we center community rather than centering money in what you have. We share this space and we sponsor it together. And I was just like, seriously, this was one of my tear moments. I'm like, this is so beautiful that we ended up here. And I am so thankful for this cat that everyone was so afraid of because of what it looked like, and it looked a bit mangy, but my kids weren't, and they were interested and they were following. And I share this because it ties into what we're talking about with what's been taken from us, and it's created this disconnection from our intuition. And truly, it's the idea that we have something somewhere else. There's this future thing that we got to get to, or this time constraint, or this expectation of what it will be, or what things look like, or how other people have done them, or even just, I only have this amount of time and I want to get all this in, or you have this desire that you want met, and if that desire is not met, then something is wrong. When actually the most magical experiences I've ever had, and when I'm in this minute in my life, and I really feel like I'm back in it right now, so I can actually speak to it from like an experienced person, like I'm living the knowledge, is to be out of time a bit and to not look at it so much. And that's why I really loved when we did the class about sacred time, because it really, really showed me like, wow, okay, like this is the thing. Because when all of our time is taken, when every last bit of it is scheduled or planned, and we don't leave space for the magical, we don't leave space for nature, we separate from ourselves. And I liked the way you took what I felt like was scheduling something, and you said, no, I'm scheduling this for myself and me and what I'm wanting to bring to this world, and how can I make it possible with my current life situation, with what I am responsible for, and how I'm holding myself accountable. Freaking love that. And yeah, we would not have done that yesterday. If I was in the space of, we have another hike to go on, or we have to get to this thing right now. And my kids have the tough, bro, my kids they are the queens of trying to take me out of my magical space. Cause they'll be like, what's next? Where are we going? What are we doing? What do we got? What are we eating? Where's the next? And I have to, and it's so funny because I have to constantly, like Mary's constantly reminding me this whole time of just remind them that we're here right now, and here is all that we actually have. And it's unbelievably important we remember that. And then the last thing that I had thought of while you were talking too is this really cool documentary that's out called, I think it's The Man Who Saved the World or The Man for the World. I can't, because it's weird. It's either The Man Who Saved the World or The Man Saving the World. I'm gonna find it and I'll send it to you guys on like the chat in Inheritance. But it is about a man who felt that he was he it's really interesting. I would prefer you watch it than I even say anything about it, to be honest with you. It's that kind of thing. But what I took from it that I loved so much is he spoke over and over again about, take your life and look at how much you're not in nature. And now, rather than centering all those other things that take you outside of nature, I want you to center nature and let all those other things be part of you centering being in nature, and see how much your life changes. And bro, I've only been doing that for maybe a few years, but man, am I a completely different individual.
Yeah.
And do I have such a different, like, just perspective on everything. So man, if we could just, I'm constantly trying to get my friends outside, that I'm constantly just trying to get my mom outside, my dad outside, get him to take the damn shoes off, like get him, let's go, like, come on, like, it's gonna be okay. Cause I'm telling you, the answers are there. They're here, they're with her, and so that's my take, I guess, is to use the senses in a different way, instead of using them to experience through them, really. Because you could watch a TV show, and you could, there's so many things. But man, have you, like yesterday, we went to Castle Crags, and there's a sacred spring there as well, but it's in a literal, like, hole in the ground. It looks like the Chalice Wells in Glastonbury. I've never even seen it, and I've been to the crags before, but we were led there, and the water's like coming from the ground, and it's bubbling on its own. And me and my girls put our hand on top of it, and they're like, how I feel this, like, what is this, and it's like, those are the things that I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. And yeah, so that's my take on what we were just talking about. It's the nature. The nature is the answer for sure. Get back outside, be outside, live more outside than you do inside.
Absolutely. And it ties back into sovereignty, what you were saying, Roxy, like the living outside and sovereignty, like that, again, that concept of like having your own, like the Anastasia books talk about it, like the, like, living in your own land, your own plot, your own garden, just like, even if it's just small in some way, but that connection to the land inherently ties into sovereignty as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
we're about
relationship.
And
all the things.
all of it. Yeah, we're about to experience that ourselves because through this experience of being in this council and everything we've been going through, I completely let go of a dream of buying a house. Like it was this whole thing I thought we were supposed to do. And life led us back around to this huge plot of land where we live with a dome house on it that these people need. They want us to live on and they want us to learn about the land. And it's an older couple. And I'm like that. I'm alive. I'm like, what? Like, oh my God. But I had this expectation, this idea, and I thought I knew, the steps. I thought I had the clarity. And I'm telling you, you're right. The faith and the trust have to come first. The clarity does not come first. No. The clarity coming first is when you should know. No, 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 no. That's not real. That's just it's a mirage because then you get that faith and trust lands in and you get the clarity and you're exactly where you're supposed to be every time. It's a gift, man. Such a gift. Such a gift. I love this.
Wow, that's super exciting to hear.
Thank you.
I want to suggest another book that's relevant to some of these themes I'm reading right now. It's called The Priestess and the Magus.
Oh, I love.
And it's such a good love story, and it's a follow-up to The Brotherhood of the Light.
Okay.
I can put it in the group thread. I can put some pictures of the covers. And it's so good. And there's this, like, literally in the beginning of the book on page 16 and 17, it describes a community that is like the way to
Oh, I
everything.
love.
They've got like aquaponics, permaculture, biodynamic agriculture, community shares, cooperatives. They're making media. Like, it's
So cool.
amazing. And it's in Northern California. And I just like read that page and was like, this is the blueprint. And then it goes, of course, into all kinds of details. And so definitely worth checking. And it's a love story. So it's like divine union and so much beauty. And yeah.
This is The Priestess and the Magus, one that you're talking about.
And the Magus. Yeah.
Oh, good. Another book to add to the gazillion
Yeah, another
books
book
I'm
for the
trying to
book
read at the
list.
same time.
And then
I'm
you
sure
mentioned
it will find
Anastasia,
me.
which is like an entire huge series. I'm like, oh yeah, I
Wait,
should
what
read
did
that
you
again.
say?
You mentioned Anastasia.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, need to open that portal again, I
Oh,
think.
goodness.
I
Yeah.
love the books. I love it. And I'm sure it will find me today when I go on some of my ventures through some of these stores. It'll just be there. I can only imagine. That's normally what
Totally.
happens is there it is.
Yeah.
And then there's me reading it all night because I love it so much.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
word magus was one of the first words out of all the words I heard at the beginning of my journey that I was like, what is that? Like, what is a magus? And I had gotten a tarot deck and they used the word magus and I think it was instead of magician or I don't know, but I remember being like, what is that word? And I could not. Every word, it's always words with me. A word will stick out and then I need to know about it. I need to know where it came from and what time frame was that used and like
What's the
who.
etymology? Oh my God.
Yes,
Everyone like, what's the
everything.
etymology of this word?
Freaking love words. Love it. Love it. Love the pings. Do you guys want to hear the last card?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's a
Maybe
good
it'll
way to
take
take
us
us
into our
home.
day. Yeah, that's what I felt like. Okay. It's the anointed. Okay. Here we go. Maybe if I can find it. If I can remember my ABCs. Okay. One of the most significant names used to identify Christ by the earliest group of people to document his teachings was the Greek word Christos, which means someone anointed with oil or simply the anointed. After Mary Magdalene anoints Christ with the spikenard and washes his feet with her hair before his crucifixion, Christ says in the Gospel of Matthew, I tell you, wherever in the whole world, this good news is proclaimed that this woman has done will be told in memory of her. Matthew 26:13. When Judas is horrified that Mary wastes such an excessive amount of oil, Christ explains that it was actually good, and it was intended that Mary save this oil to prepare for his burial. It was intended. This was what had been intended all along. Mary Magdalene was the one who was meant to assist Christ in his transition from this life to the next. The ornate jar Mary holds in so many of the paintings and icons of her is filled with holy oil used to anoint the body before the burial. The priests and priestesses of the Egyptian goddess Isis anointed the body as a way to assist in the transition from this life to the next while remaining conscious. And if we see the resurrection narrative as a metaphor, the anointing ritual becomes the passage from the death of the ego, the limited egoic self, into the expansion realm of the soul. This is the transformation of consciousness at the heart of the Christian tradition, and Mary Magdalene is the one who shows us the way. Anointing, then, in its original context, is the act of consciously acknowledging that the physical body passes away, but the soul within the body does not. And each time we consciously die to the ego, each time we allow ourselves to die to what we were, in order to rise more aware of the soul and who we are now, we are anointed. And we do this in memory of her. What aspect of my soul am I aware of in this moment? I'm aware of the childlike wonder, awe, silliness. I made my intention at 5 o'clock this morning to laugh more today. So that part of my soul is loud and clear.
Yay.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that feels like I've been doing an anointing ritual with Azani. That feels like a really
Oh, I love it.
place to land us and come full circle, especially on this day of Magdalene. May we all anoint ourselves today. And I know, Elizabeth, you need to hop off early, but you're still here. So I'm gonna call it and let that be the closing word. And thank you, Megan, for bringing those cards in, and ladies for your wisdom. Such a
Sending you healing
pleasure.
energy, love. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mwah, mwah.
Love you.